the Committee of the Whole Board meeting. This is kind of a special calling because we, as board members, want to have questions and just more information as we come up on our potential of offering to go out again for a referendum. So this is our opportunity to hear more and to get some questions answered if we have some. And again, just welcoming in the new year, lots of new things. So we're excited to be here tonight with this Committee of the Whole meeting. So I'm going to turn to Clerk Zadowski, and she'll take roll.
Member Banks.
Here.
Member Eder and Member Loeffler-Kemp are excused. Member Lofeld.
Here.
Member Mikesell. Present. I am here. Member Williams.
Here.
Superintendent Magus.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Bonds.
Present.
Deputy Clerk Zunich. Present. And Executive Director of HR and Operations Severance.
Present.
And again, this is ISD 709, Duluth Public Schools, and it is a special Committee of the Whole meeting. And just for our audience and for those that will tune in on YouTube too, this is kind of a special ask that board members asked for, but other board members had conflicts, and we have also been meeting otherwise in other months leading up to this. The returning board members this year have been a part of the referendum journey, so we don't always need to come, and we're just glad we have a quorum. We're glad that we're here, and again, this will be offered on YouTube, and I know that my colleagues will tune in there. So after that, the only item on our agenda is number 3, and it's discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Magus, and he will also lead us and direct us.
Thank you. And I just want to say welcome to many of our stakeholders who are here tonight, as well as people who are listening, as well as our board. And I appreciate the opportunity to have more dialogue around this important question. I know that we've talked about going out for referendum again, and the vote on that, if the board chooses to, would be next week. So this gives the board opportunity to have conversation, to ask questions. Also for us to, potentially if there are questions that need a little more time to answer, you could ask them now and we can follow up with you. So this is meant is really an opportunity for some deeper engagement. We feel like it's a very important ask, and we also realize that we have 3 new board members in addition to our board that was here previously that need to consider this. So we want to make sure that sometimes when we are in conversation, we assume that everybody has been there and has been along on the journey with us. So if there's anything that we're missing or anything that you need more of a refresher for, or if you have any easy questions or difficult questions, I encourage you to ask them. And really this is meant as an overall opportunity for dialogue about what we might choose to do next week, or what you might choose to do next week. So when we think about the overall financial picture of the district, I think there are many positives and there are some challenges that we need to consider. I think that the district has worked very, very hard with the board support in approving the budget and working with the budget to be in a much better financial place than we have before. We have a better fund balance. Our bond rating with Moody's is much better. So the outward assessment of the district's finances is in a much more positive place. But as you learned from the Baird presentation last week, we are in a place where without continued technology funding, we're going to be in a place of deficit spending, not next year because we have a little cushion, but the year after. And gradually that would really eat away at our fund balance and things of that nature. Without any additional programming, it would mean that we'd have to seek reductions in the budget, and those budgetary reductions would mean not this year but next year a reduction of approximately $2.2 to $2.5 million. And so that's something that we want to avoid, because we feel like we're doing some really great things for our students. We have great staff, we have great administrators really doing their best for our kids, and we want to make sure that we have what we need. As far as the other aspect, we've heard for many years about the ESSER cliff, the federal funding cliff that was coming at some point, that eventually and many school districts across the state and country are facing this, that when the federal funding ran out, that there were expenditures being made that would need to have a resizing, or sometimes they call it right sizing, but it's hard because the right sizing in this case means cutting valuable programming and supports at times. So we really don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we have what we need for our kids, and we want to make sure that we have what we need for the technology as well. The technology of the district, we have not had a replacement cycle. We have not had a budget for technology other than about $250,000, which is really a pittance compared to what a district of our size would need. And so it's important for us to really think about what are the needs of the district from a financial sense. And also, even though this is largely technology and CTE related, it does have an impact on the rest of the budget, because when we use our regular budget to help support the technology needs we have as a district, it kind of robs from Peter to pay Paul. We're piecing things together based on, okay, we need to replace these devices, or we need to replace smart boards. What are we going to cut from another place? What are we going to move from another place? And it doesn't lead for us to be able to really plan accordingly and really meet the needs of our kids. So we're really thinking about how can we shore this up. And if you remember, our previous referendum, the November 7th referendum, that was the second time we went out for a technology referendum. First time was in 2018, and that was missed by about 1,400 votes. We were quite a bit closer this time with 291 votes between the yes and the no. And that's out of 30,000 voters we had. So it was less than 1%. And so really, when we think about where we are, we're in a better place because question 1 passed, and that was helpful, but it doesn't help us with those technology needs that we have. And so we've really talked about how if this is truly the need for the district, then I think that we've done a lot to build on the conversation, and it's important for us to move forward and think about how can we ask again to the community in a different way, in a better way, to receive more support for a potential referendum. And if you have anything that you want to share as far as summary from January 9th's presentation or anything about our finances in general, that'd be great.
Thank you. I think you summarized it all really well. It has been asked of me, why are some of the other districts making cuts for next year? And we are not, I'm not anticipating a budget adjustment until FY26. And it's because our first question passed that really helped take that $2.6 million out of the general fund and put it into a debt service levy. So it's not coming out of the general fund anymore. So that has been helpful. We saw an increase in our comp ed funding and an increase in our special ed cross-subsidy money. So those are 3 reasons why next year we are going to be, we will be okay next year. And to assistant superintendent's credit, we've been trying to spend, we have spent the money on staffing, but we've also spent half the money on things. So when you do that, you have less, if you spend all of it on staffing, then that's how many people you need to reduce your budget by. So we were able to be very, we were very aware of that. And so that was very helpful. We spent it on technology, the money that we did have, that was very helpful. Now we need to keep it going. Money that we never had before, and programming. So all of these things were helpful. And I have done a 5-year plan. It will have to be revised again this spring. But right now, it shows that in FY26 that we will start having to make some budget adjustments. The technology referendum will really help because there'll be less money that comes out of the general fund, as the superintendent just explained. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Will you monitor for questions then, or stop if you
I'm
think?
trying
Okay.
to see, but if people have questions and I don't see, please feel free to give me a hand signal. So we're really hoping that the board will consider this and consider a vote to move forward with the referendum and how much we'll go for. But that would be for next week, not today. So we're not making a decision today, but it's an opportunity to have dialogue. And then again, if there are questions, things that come up, this allows for another week of opportunity for conversation, and you can have more conversation at next week's board meeting too. But we didn't want to cram it in so that you were, it was next Tuesday and you're having to make a huge decision about multi-million-dollar decision for the community without this opportunity. So thanks to the board and thanks to Chair Lofold for putting this together. So
can I?
Member
yeah,
Loeffel?
I'm going to stop there since you allowed us to ask questions. And so I just heard you say that, we have these three choices, and we heard that last week as well, the 5 million, the 5.2 million, the 5 million, and the 4.6, somewhere in
Yes.
there. And I think, and you just said now that you're not really going to share tonight, or you're asking us to look at these three opportunities, which, but next week on our board meeting, the potential for the board to vote on one of those monetary asks is something that we might want to pause right now and talk about, or I know that oftentimes, you have been walking this journey and you've been in other districts that have gone out for referendums, and I think we shared a little bit last week that asking for the exact same amount is a sign that we need that exact same amount. And by going and changing that, that might seem to some of our community a little disingenuous, like, what do you mean? You asked for it last time. If we went for the more middle option, we could be sharing with our community that we heard you, that maybe it was a little bit too much of an ask at this time economically for us, maybe in a tax year where we see that. So we are listening to you. Maybe that was, so we've pared down maybe a little bit of what we could maybe get by with and help us both fit the needs for our students in the technology area. So that middle ask, or we could even, go a little bit less than the little less and go that route in hopes that will land with people. So do you want to say anything more about that, or is that something we want to discuss tonight or next week, or you just want to think about it and we'll know that it's going to go that way or one way?
I think it would be good if you could have the conversation and come to not necessarily a decision, but at least if we can know where things are trending, that would be helpful. We do have some suggestions as well based on continued conversations. We can make a recommendation if the board is wishing for that. But I think if we listen first, that might give you an opportunity to hear what would the different amounts bring us. And so we have, for the meeting, we have there was already scheduled an opportunity for for a presentation from Bart and Peter to share about what it is that we have within the plan. And then also, based partly on input from the board, there was a request that we have representation of some of our stakeholders. So we have representatives from the teaching and learning team, we have principals, we have teachers. We had asked for students, but I don't think we have students today. But I'm sure they're cheering us on from home and other activities. So if we could share a little presentation and then get some input, and then we can go from there. But to your point, we have been debating that pretty significantly internally. Should we go for should we do a little decrease? Should we go for the full amount? Should we go for the 4.6? 4.6 does leave us with some additional needs that won't be met. And in speaking with Todd Rapp from Rapp Strategies today, he feels that going for 5 million is a very small decrease, and it doesn't necessarily represent a significant change, and we might even alienate some of our supporters. So that was their input today, but I also get that hearing, that a slight decrease might be beneficial. We also have Danette Sebo, who is presenting, because we are shifting things a bit where we're adding some CTE replacement because of the ancient lathes and ancient technology that we have in our CTE program. Many of those things need to be replaced. So, Mr. Bonds, you want to take it from here and introduce?
Actually, you've covered it all, so I'll just turn it over to our team, and I want to, again, thank the board for this opportunity to really share the importance of 21st century technology readiness and the importance of the need to have a replacement cycle for our CTE equipment. So I'm going to stop there. You know where I land. I want the best for our students, and I want the best for this district. And we have individuals here who have been really thoughtful about what is needed, and so I'll turn it over to, as Superintendent indicated, we have Danette Sebo, who is the Principal on Special Assignment, who oversees our CTE area, and she has in the audience CTE teachers as well. And we have Peter Graves I had to capture it, he is the Educational Technology and Innovation Coordinator. So we definitely had to have Peter here, and we have, of course, Mr. Bart Smith, who is our manager for technology. So I'll turn it over to the three of them. They have a presentation for us. So
Okay, thank you. Actually, I just have to step over there and cast the presentation up.
Okay.
And also to note that what we're sharing is very much in draft format. This is meant as more of a conversational piece. It's not meant as a decided list or something that is, formally completed. And also some of the things related to branding and the work that we do around the marketing of the referendum, that will be further revised as well. But this gives us some talking points to start with, and really appreciate the team putting this together on short notice.
So my name's Peter Graves. I've been in the district for over 35 years. As a teacher, on November 7th, I came into this role and handed over my teaching. This is some of the few times I get to teach, so if I start to get long-winded, you certainly can put me on pause. Bart and I, our goal was to come up with, Bart's really good at the number side of it, and I'm going to give you a sneak preview. I know that this printout that you have is really small as far as these numbers go, and the numbers are important, but we also have, I think I was listening on the last meeting that you had last week, and the question was why, or how do you connect the numbers with what do we need it for, why are we using it, or how are we incorporating it? So that's what we're going to try to do tonight, is to give you some of that insight. And then you'll also have the numbers. I found that on the printouts of the numbers, I did it on a different page. The problem with if I expand the size of the print, then you lose the 10 years. So there is some meaningfulness in the way that the years roll out. Some years you have certain amounts that you do, and some years you don't. So there's getting the whole picture is important, but also being able to see it without glasses is important too. So, so you have that in front of you, and I will refer back to it. So that's the sneak preview. That's the ending part that you see here with the numbers. The presentation that you have, which is this one, is kind of our conversation that we're going to have as far as what are the different things that are in this levy referendum. And just to give, because I was a math teacher, that was my background. And to have visuals for my students was important, so giving you a visual idea of what's going on. We took the referendum and we broke it up into, we call them buckets, but we broke them up into categories. The first one you see is just the toolkits or the tools that you have on there. That's the first little icon that you have. The second one, can I use this further? So the second one is going to be, that's for security. And the third one is for infrastructure. And the last one is for training. and teacher in-servicing. So trying to think about how you use a whole referendum to make sure it's an effective referendum is you got to think of a lot of different parts. I think one of the things that we've done in the past is we sold a referendum, or at least it was the impression that a referendum was buying Chromebooks. And if you keep it simple like that, you don't have a lot of background or enthusiasm on spending money on Chromebooks. It's a lot more than that. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, and so that's what the goal is tonight, to just kind of give you those ideas. And I think that might have been what you were kind of asking for at the last meeting, okay? So to go into a little bit more detail on what those 4 different pieces are, we're thinking this as being a toolkit that our students can have so that they can present themselves after graduating from high school with a tool belt that has things that they can use for their future. These different tools, whether they're vocational or if they're digital, are really important for them to have. And so in order to keep that trend of having those tools together, that's really important for us, and that's the first part. So we called it supporting our students and staff with 21st century digital and career technical skills toolkit. So that's what we want to do. It's important to have the cyber safety. There's 2 parts to that one. One is the digital cyber safety, and that's when it comes to filters, and that's when it comes to scanning different things, but it's also physical safety. That's when it comes to cameras in the buildings, that's when it comes to other things. And it's 21st century stuff that we are required to have, it's 21st century stuff that we want to have, and we want to provide those, that technology in our buildings and with our students. The third one is the infrastructure one, to create a digital infrastructure that, and I think these are important points, safe, accessible, resilient, sustainable, and future-proof. And all those things we need. We need to be able to use it on a dependable basis. We need to be able to scale it up when things have to be scaled up for the future. Something about technology is that every few years, it gets scaled up. And in order to get to those needs or be able to use that kind of infrastructure, we want to plan for that. So when I'm talking about this stuff, if you think back to that worksheet that's really hard to read, those will be in categories that will give you an idea where we're applying that to, okay? And then the last one was on being able to teach our teachers how to teach or how to use the technology. And that's an important piece to it. As a teacher, like I was in the classroom in October, and I have a lot of technology background. It would be nice to be able to, and I taught math, to be able to take the tools that I have, the digital tools, and to be able to directly apply them to my math classroom as a teacher. And I think we need to provide that so that our students, or our teachers can provide our students with the best means possible. So those are the 4 different buckets that we kind of broke it up into. And then what we did is we took those buckets and we broke them down even more, give you some more ideas. So I'm on the page that you see up on the screen. Those are the bullet points of what we're trying to accomplish. If not, and this is it's a draft, it's a thought, it was a beginning process, it was trying to connect that, and it's not the finished product. It's whatever the product that we want at the end, but these are things to think about. Not to just read through all of them, because you certainly can do that, but think of all of this stuff as a tool. And if you gave a student a cell phone as a tool, and you didn't teach him how to use it, I don't know if anybody in the household has ever had that. I always thought of it as every parent knows they've had a digital referendum with a 13-year-old sitting at a dinner table. You know, I want this. Well, why do you want it, right? How are we going to pay for it? What is it going to be used for? But it's a tool that they use, and we use this tool all the time. And so the tools that we find in our classrooms are just as important, and we've got to come up with those answers. So what will that tool do for us? Some of the things that are on there, I'll highlight a couple of them. Just to connect modern digital assets with students. Put it in their hands. Let them use it. Let them dream, because they're not going to be able to dream unless they can see it, and that's important. Provide equity in leveling the playing field, making modern digital resources available for students and staff to explore their academic potential and their possibilities. You can't dream if you don't have something to actually have in your hands. And so we're trying to connect that with them. And if leveling the playing field, I think, is really important, because If not us, who? If a student doesn't have access to the right technology, where are they going to get that access? How are we going to give them the advantage that they're going to need when they get done with high school? And our whole city deserves that. And so this is providing tools for our students to reach their potential. The CTE part, Danette, you want to add some stuff to the CTE needs?
I could figure that much out on my own. Hi, I'm Danette Sebo. One of the programs that I'm in charge of on special assignment is Career and Tech Ed. It has been mine for the past number of years since we cut our coordinator position. Career and Tech Ed is unique in many ways. You're going to hear about all of them at the next full board meeting in February when it's CTE month. We bring an amazing show for you. There are a lot of requirements within our Career and Tech Ed programs to maintain their approval with the state that require us to have equipment, software, programming, and curriculum that are up to industry standards. So we're trying to get our students some employability skills within those fields along the way, some certifications, a lot of experience. We have a number of our CTE instructors here. Do you want to wave? They're my favorites. I can say that now because I don't have a whole staff, but we have to do those things in order to maintain our programs, and the cost associated with that grow every year, from the need for actual desktop computers to run our SolidWorks, our Adobe, our business software, to the intense amount of equipment that goes with a lot of these programs. These instructors will tell you that there's equipment in their spaces that's older than they are. That's not a lie, and it's not an exaggeration. Some of it is just so old and unsafe that we can't use it, and it sits. Some of it we're limping along, but we are definitely not able to say that we are up to industry standards across the board. So just to maintain the programs we have, those expenses continue to grow, and we're making tough choices every year about what we can try to fix this year and what has to wait. We also want to grow our programs. Part of the referendum that did pass was to increase opportunities for our high school students. And when you're growing career and tech ed programs, from our current programs, adding new courses and more sections, to brand new programs, all of which you'll hear about next month, there's expenses associated with that. It's in addition to the curriculum needs, there's technology needs. These programs have to take students on field trips. We have to connect with business and industry. There has to be competitive clubs that go with these programs. Again, you'll learn about all of that, but the technology and equipment costs are intense in these programs, and we have had a lot of support in the district, but we are stuck at a point where we're either going to need to eliminate some things to maintain what we have, or we're going to need additional funding to grow.
So there is a need for these tools, and I think everybody here probably sees that, and those are obviously the goals that we want. And sometimes we stop with our asks for different monies. We ask these are just the things, but we don't realize some of the other things that have to be involved when it comes to supporting those tools. And so the second page that are on there is the cybersecurity part. And in the cybersecurity part, there's some stuff that might seem obvious. We want our students to be safe. We want them to be digital citizens, but we also want them to be safe in what they're doing. We have to maintain certain types of monitoring systems. We have to be ahead of the next bad thing that can happen. So we have to, train ourselves. We have to use other tools in order to do that. We want to practice our best idea of what cybersecurity is by coming up with modern techniques in order to do that. And those are some of the highlights that they have on there. Just a question would be that we want to put ourselves in a position, if we were to had a cyber attack or something like that, how can we defend ourselves? How can we see that it's actually happening? And those are all things that have to come into this bucket. These aren't the most exciting buckets, but they're definitely buckets that we need to have. The third one is on an infrastructure, and this is the background pieces that come with it, your network, your all of your different equipment that comes with supporting, I'd say rostering, but all kinds of different equipment and personnel and an idea of what it comes to just provide the background for our tools. And the middle one that's on there, I made myself some notes. This infrastructure should also be scalable to meet future needs. Your infrastructure is good today, it might be good tomorrow, and then the third year it might be something different. And so you'll see those costs on that spreadsheet as you go through, because that's an important thing. Costs will grow the more devices that you add to a system. So if you were thinking about 5 years ago when we had X amount of devices, we had an infrastructure that supported that. And then when we added Chromebooks for students, not every student, but when we added Chromebooks, that infrastructure had to grow. And so if you're going to meet the needs of these tools that we want to put in place, we're going to have an infrastructure that will do that. And again, in that spreadsheet, those costs are put out there for you to take a look at. And then the last bucket that's on here is providing staff the training in order to help students realize the potential of the tools that they're being able to use. And just thinking that also comes at a cost. It was great for me as a teacher to be able to distance teach my students when COVID was here. At the time, I know I spent a lot of hours helping other teachers learn those systems, just on how to put stuff in and to correct them and to give the communication. We haven't had the opportunity to totally go in and show them how to use the tool specific to the subject that they teach. And I think that's an important part of the piece of this, is so that our students can be taught by the expert who has been trained, who has been in workshops, who has been put in these situations where they can learn how to use the tools. And a tool's not just a Chromebook, it's the stuff that we have, you know, in our district. So those are the 4 different buckets that we have. This next slide is actually just the pie chart of the percentages that they break down into. And you'll see that there's 5 of them. There are color-coded too, because you guys have color copies, but the yellow one is going to be the toolkits. Those are the tools. And if you go clockwise down there, the 17%, or the blue one, that's your cybersecurity and your physical security. And then the orange one there, that's your infrastructure. You have a red one, that's your staff training. And you also have a gray one there, and the gray one is supporting staff. I didn't know, or we didn't know exactly where to put supporting staff. Some of it overlaps in other different things. And as far as staffing that goes, you're looking at I personally work with the DIS team, the Digital Innovations team. They were staffed at a higher rate than they are currently now. Their job is having them in the schools, being helpful to the maintenance of the Chromebooks and the support of the staff through whatever digital means that they may have. That number has been cut back, and that's a piece that, like, it could fall into a number of these different pieces of the pie. Might also be thinking possible of having a cybersecurity person in charge of something like that. That's a possibility, and that's a staffing person. There was a couple other ones that are not on the top of my head right now, but that's why that piece is there a little bit set out from the other ones. You'll see that in the spreadsheet. It's the last thing that's on there. It does have the fixed cost to it, and it's also important. So for me to stop talking, because I'm sure I've reached my limit, just the thought process on this whole thing. If somebody comes up and asks you, why do I need to invest in Chromebooks? And that might be the case. There's a little bit more to it, and hopefully this kind of brought a little bit of that into it. But I like to think of it as investing in some of the tools that our young people in our community can have, use, and experience, because it might be important to us in the community to be able to benefit from one of those students using some of that technique and tool for us. A contractor who is going to use a pneumatic nailer instead of a hammer, a healthcare worker that's going to have a lot of good research and a lot of good background using technology, or maybe it's just the next person that's in the block that's going to be able to help you with one of your needs. So I think as a strong community that we need to be able to help our students with the different tools of the 21st century. And with that, I'm going to stop talking. Well, actually, I can tell you one more. Can you put the, sorry, Bart. And I want Bart to talk because Bart is the person that does all of this all the time. I've been here for 35 and he's been here for about that. And he's done all of this stuff behind the scenes. And I was going to say this in a meeting. We appreciate the heck out of Bart because of what he's done for so many years. And I'll end with that. But if you look at the spreadsheet, if you see it up on the screen, you might get a bit better look at it. Column A is the different groups, the different buckets that you see. Column B is a description of the things for it. Column C is the total for the 10 years. And then each one of the years has a cost out to it. And so that's the kind of stuff that you'd be looking for there. And if you need a bigger copy, we certainly can get you bigger copies. How's that?
Thank you. Yeah, I worked quite a bit on the spreadsheet and listing that out, and it does go over all those different columns, like Peter said, and we tried to attach all of them to, a key goal plan on there. Some years are 0 because we had to stay within budget, and then other years, we're putting in stuff. I know you'll see on your spreadsheet, you'll see, I don't know what row is it, it's probably like the 20-some row. There'll be some highlighted ones on the back. That is concerning our network infrastructure we're putting in. We put in $1 million last year for our wireless. We're putting in $1.4 million this summer. And before this levy would end, that'd all have to be replaced. All of it has to be replaced. So with this levy, I don't have that money because there isn't enough money in there to do that those following years. I think it's year 8 and 9 or 9 and 10. So.
Before I call on member Mike Sold, can you just share just a couple clear examples of some of the things that might come out of the tools category? Danette shared some that's related to CTE. Can you share some of the other examples beyond Chromebooks that would be in that bucket of tools?
Lots of different types of digital tools that we use that we might not even realize. If somebody says Chromebooks, okay, we have Chromebooks. Graphing calculators that I had were available. That might be a possibility. It's a tool. This year, there was a need for students that weren't able to speak the English language and to provide them with the tools in order to have those conversations with us and teachers. Those are tools that are possibilities. They're not specifically listed in here, but when I think of tools, I think of, yes, the Chromebooks are the big things and the big items that you have in the CTE, but there's also a lot of different types of things when we think of technology, so.
Including in the classroom, you think about even the display. So many of our teachers, we were able, with the use of our ESSER dollars, to replace a number of our smart boards and display screens. But we still have a significant number of teachers who are in need of devices that are in disrepair or not function at all. So we have a significant number of teachers who require, even at this moment, a new smart board or a new digital display screen. That's an example beyond just, again, the Chromebook. Can we also then switch to things that are specific related to safety? Some of the things that we talked about, such as camera systems and other things.
Yeah, I can go to the safety. I do want to go back to the tool. I looked at every piece of technology or every item as a tool. The software, the seesaw, the canvas, those are all tools. If you don't know how to use those tools, they're not effective. The smart boards, the sound systems in the classrooms, the auditorium projectors, all those areas are all just tools to be used. There's training that goes with those tools as well. For safety, we have on the safety, we have the physical security, which is the camera systems. We have 2 schools that have 17-year-old cameras, security cameras. Another 2 that have 16-year-old security systems. So on this plan, we have all the elementary schools getting camera upgrades to match what the secondaries have. We also have
Cell phone booster.
oh, go ahead.
Boosters.
Oh, yes, the cell boosters. We have a lot of our buildings with poor cellular coverage in them. For safety, it would be best to have that coverage taken care of met. I know Leicester Park and Piedmont for sure have 0 cell coverage, at least by AT&T. in those two buildings. I know some of the high schools have spots that do not work with their cell phones, and we want to have 100% coverage in all our buildings, and that's on this plan as well.
Thank you. I'll go to Member Meixel, and we'll, of course, have opportunities to provide additional examples of these items that fall underneath those different buckets, so thank you. Member Meixel?
This is just a clarification question. So we received this copy of a 10-year plan, and I'm noticing that it's slightly different than the 10-year plan that's included in draft form here. And just trying to figure out which one I should be looking at.
The one is from the fall. The one you received last week was from the fall. They just took what we had from the fall and they said, here you go. And then they asked me to work on, a new one. So basically I took that one as the base and modified some stuff in there so it lined up with these goals or key goals buckets.
We also thought it was important for the context for the board, especially for you and other new members, to know what we had asked for the first time, as well as what we will be considering this time.
Member Sadowski?
Bart, can you tell me what bucket you were looking at or what line you were looking at for, even if this were passed, when we got to year 10, you wouldn't have any, was it this? We wouldn't have funds left for it?
It's row 19, column, 9 and 10 year. That is our digital infrastructure.
Okay,
So those.
I see it now.
Yeah,
Thank
those
you.
numbers should be in the millions.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Lofel?
So when I think of toolkit, I know you weren't privileged, many of you here weren't privileged to be with us at the MSBA conference. Sometimes in our toolkit, we want to have some clearer ideas, but we might not even know what we need because technology is advancing so quickly. So we had the privilege of listening for an hour and a half, a presentation by code.org. And I know many of you probably know that site. I think you probably brought the little mouses and had us doing that. But it was fascinating. It was fascinating. And I thought to myself, well, that's what we needed to show last November, is these jobs. And they were showing us where you will now code the robot to plow your fields. No more will they be tractor drivers. And so I don't know how we can translate that clearly without really, I don't want to turn off our voters either, but it was fascinating to see coding being done. And if we're not able to have that kind of technology in our elementaries and that kind of ability over 10 years, we might not be able to specify, and maybe we'll get in trouble by specifying so clearly what we think the money's going to go for, because in 5 years, our technology, we'll have the money, but I hope, but what we might have thought we need now has shifted to the next age of inventions. And so it was incredible, and it was really, for someone that has spent 40 years in the district and started in the 70s in my training, so we're about the same, that just was unheard of. So I think as we look at our toolkit, and I'm a wordsmith, I understand the use of words and language, so toolkit is really a nice way to share with our community what this all involves, because in a way, if we can't go past the word Chromebook, we're not going to change our messaging. So I don't even want to necessarily use Chromebook. I use toolkit. That's good, but also to really ask our leaders in the technology to help us as board members, because we're willing to do a lot of legwork and a lot of meetings in our community. But watching code.org and Hattie and Hannah from their leadership team, and of course I looked, we're all on their websites, and we were looking, they've got a lot of stuff that we could have probably trained ourselves a little bit more, but it was fascinating. So when I look at toolkit now at 37%, I at least have a little bit more vision, and I'm so thankful that our whole board was with us at MSBA, and they share with us a lot of information that help us with things like this too. So that was where my mind was going on toolkit, so thank you.
Member Sadowski, your hand, or your light is still green.
Yep, thank you. I'm really glad that you brought that up because Peter, when you said we need to get these into the hands of students and let them dream, that's exactly what I thought of because Hadi grew up in an environment that was war-torn and because his parents brought him home this computer and he got to practice coding, it really opened up his world and allowed him to dream. And so I just really appreciate the focus on the CTE. Thank you for this. This is really helpful, especially to see it over the course of the years and the total. This is really valuable, and I know that it was probably a lot of work too, so thank you. Bart.
Superintendent Magus?
That was one of the requests of one of the board members, was a more detailed list of some of the expenditures. So we wanted to make sure that we shared the last ask and then the current ask. Member Banks, I think you're next.
Thank you. So I kind of wrote down something that I need to say. As a board, we are obligated to provide the ultimate in safety for all of our children and staff in every building. So for me, hearing that some buildings have 17-year-old cameras, I'm deeply concerned about that. That alone just kind of sets me off right there, knowing that we need to fix that issue. I really want to hear from our teachers. I believe we're going to hear from them, hopefully, of whom are the first contact our children receive. And as a community, we really must work to focus our energies on what's best for all of our learners. And I believe the technology and every aspect of the technology will get our children to a place in the state and the nation where they are ready to walk out the door and they have the skills necessary for their futures. And right now, I think there's some concern that they may be lacking some of that. And so I think people know where I stand with regard to the technology and all the aspects that are included in that. But I really want to hear from our teachers because, again, they are the first contact that our children receive. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will ask, I have asked already, I know Ethan Fisher, who is the president of the Teachers Association, he is here to also speak, but there are other teachers as well. So I'll start with Ethan Fisher. Let me see here. How about, it looks like these gentlemen and Danette are about to leave. So how about sitting there, Ethan?
Hi, good evening. Ethan Fisher, I think I know all of you. This is my 29th year in our district. I spent 24 years in the classroom teaching high school social studies, and now I am the DFT president. It wasn't that long ago, and I think Cindy was in this meeting with me. I know Bart was there. We had a conversation in a special labor management meeting for technology, and the guarantee that we had at the time was that every classroom would have a telephone, a computer, and a whiteboard. And that was what we were guaranteed as far as technology is concerned. Do you remember this conversation? What COVID did in terms of maybe the blessing of it is it gave some financial resources to be able to get some Chromebooks along with other things, some updates to smart boards, things that we knew we were not going to get in a normal situation. We are at that point now, though, that I have heard our senior leaders talk about where money is going to start dropping off because that COVID money's going away. And I think a technology referendum at this point in time would help ensure that moving forward we have the necessary resources that our teachers need to teach and our students need to learn. And I guess the final thing I'll say is I remember 2010, 2011, when the new buildings were opening and all the classrooms had smart boards, and the excitement of being able to go into that as a teacher and start using something new that I hadn't used before in my teaching career. And knowing now that without additional technology money, a lot of those basic things that we've come to rely on are not going to be sustainable, and that's unfortunate. My fear was, coming out of the pandemic, that we would go back to business as usual. And shame on us if that's the way it goes. My hope is that if we can be successful in this referendum, which I believe we can and will be, if that's the direction we go, that we can start looking at new opportunities for our students. I love that we have an emphasis on career tech ed that's growing and emerging, with only 1 out of 4 students going to a 4-year college degree. I think we can't emphasize that enough. And so I'm really excited that we're going that direction. I'll stop talking, and I'll let Cindy say a few things.
Hi, I'm Cindy Miller. I'm going to read this at the bottom of my email. I'm Media Specialist, Technology Coordinator, and Webmaster at Congdon Park School. I am Library Media Tech Content Specialist and District Computer Science Lead for Duluth Public Schools. And I know most of you. Welcome, new members. So when COVID happened, we were not ready. We were not prepared to use technology to teach. And from a teacher point of view, that is very important, that we can teach our students for what's coming, not for what's here right now, but for what's coming. And in 4 areas, the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, creativity, and collaboration, are the 4 things that we need to be teaching, and we need these tools to be able to do that. And when I say tools, I don't mean the devices themselves. We need to know how to use those devices in order to do the teaching, to provide for our kids the needs of our students. And there's a lot more people involved than actual devices. And I think Peter said everything that I would ever say. I think that he and I share a brain, and so this concludes my talk at this table.
I'll just add one more thing. I love that a portion of this looks at training for teachers. In the time that I've been in my position and Superintendent Magus has been in his position, we have talked many, many times about how do we get more professional development, how do we grow that, and we can put all the technology in the world out there, but if we don't train our teachers how to use it appropriately and effectively, it doesn't do us any good. So I love that that's a portion of this. So.
Thank you. And I know I have one of our CTE teachers coming up to share, as well as our director of elementary. She's coming up to just provide a little insight on how technology is used in our elementary schools.
And while they transition up, can I just want to reflect on what Ethan and Cindy brought forward too, and that is that, I know this is preliminary, so I'm not going to, I know we're going to take care of our staff and the training and the teachers. But when I look at only 15%, 15, what is that, 15 in the red on teacher training or staff training, and I'm assuming that, we're going to use some of that referendum, and that's appropriate, but I would think that if we need more, that our general budget will have a little bit more there, because we are using these dollars for referendum. So I'm confident that our district will listen to our staff and our principals and know that if we're going to bring in some of these really robust curriculum and blended learning and CTE enhancements that will give our staff the professional development and the training that they need.
Thank you, Superintendent Magus.
Yes, and thank you for that question, and thank you as well for our teachers for sharing. For Cindy and Ethan, I just really appreciate that perspective. And I agree with you that we need to make sure that the training is robust and supportive. And I also think that by adding significantly to the staff with the digital innovation specialists, that is job embedded professional learning too. And that sometimes is very, very effective, and sometimes more effective than taking a day to sit and get, but to have somebody who can sit with you and work with you and teach you and work with you in context, a lot of times that could be more beneficial. So I'm excited about the plan we have, but it has to be some of both, and we will work to make sure that that's identified.
And then just jump in one more time. And again, this is good for Brenda too, and others to hear, that I would think that we would be proactive in working with our higher ed people so that our teacher preparation programs are also meeting the needs of a robust ability for our newer teachers coming into our world now, might have the better training and more in computer science, because that's the future of that. So that the teacher training dollars that we will need in the years ahead might not be as significant as we are going to see in these first 5 to 10 years, because our higher ed people will be, I hope, will be working with that. And I know that our leadership now has a good relationship with College of St. Scholastica and the university, so we can already be planting the seed for that.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Because I didn't. There you go, Josh. There you go.
New science teacher at Denfeld this year, so it's nice to meet everyone. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Yep, Brenda Sparts, Director of Elementary Schools. As you guys were talking, I should have been taking notes because I kept thinking of things. And one of the things, the digital innovation specialists that are in the schools, we don't have as much in the elementary schools now because we just simply don't have the people and the resources. But if you would have been in the elementary schools last year, you would have seen those individuals in the classrooms guiding and modeling teachers and how to apply technology as a tool for learning. I remember one day I went into a kindergarten classroom, and I forget who was in there, but it was incredible what they were doing with the kindergartners and how this digital innovation special, he was working with the teacher and kind of, like you were saying, it was that job embedded, boots on the ground, guiding this teacher and how to employ technology as a tool. So I think they were a very valuable addition, and at least at the elementary level, they're very missed. That skill set is missed at the elementary schools right now. So another thing I was thinking about is curriculum. If you go into our K-1-2 classrooms right now, you will see very engaging lessons surrounding phonemic awareness and phonics, specifically using our Haggerty and UFly. If you're newer, you might not know about these new resources that we have, but it does use our smart boards and our technology and guides the teachers and the students through very explicit teaching of these skills. And it's a lot of some songs, hand gestures, movement, and it's all driven by this technology as a tool. So I encourage you to, go to our elementary schools and see how this is being used in the classrooms. Do we have enough tools in our toolbox at the elementary schools? No, we don't, especially in our younger grades. We kind of invested more in the third, fourth, and fifth grades with tools. So getting those down into the younger grades might be beneficial. One of the tenets of Minnesota Commitments to Equity is start early. And so I always am a proponent of that, and I could talk forever on it, but I won't, so.
Awesome. Well, again, my name is Josh Borkert. I'm a new science teacher here at Denfeld. So this is my first year in the Duluth Public Schools, but I've been a teacher for about 10 years and kind of did a career change. I was a research scientist, and I was a public policy deputy director with the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics before coming here. So I worked in and out of Washington, D.C., advocating STEM policy, everything from Department of Defense to immigration to closing equity gaps. I've got a huge spreadsheet here of everything the CTE program would love to have. And me being new to this district, I gotta say I haven't worked with anyone who hasn't loved their job and loved working hard at their job. I've worked in a district where the first person that I talked to said, "Hey, nice to meet you. Everyone here's got their own island. Make it as pretty as we want, but don't step on my island." That's a terrible way to think about it. Like, everyone here has been fantastic. So, like, for the school board, I don't know, like, if you guys, I haven't met you yet, but like, everyone's really truthful in what they want. And so everything from, like, here we have a CNC machine to a Ojibwe medicine garden. Like, they're so creative. It's great stuff. I think really, like, there's a reason why I accepted a job at Denfeld and teaching aerospace physics, which is what I do, is when I advocated for aerospace, it has the highest equity gaps, like less than 15% of the people there are of color or women. So in high school specifically, the largest equity gaps are with the same populations. So it's really easy for me to go to my aerospace class and do things that would close those gender and equity gaps, and you can see it. You just see who signs up, go on Infinite Campus, see who's there. Hey, it's working or it's not. It's pretty easy. I've had just about every principal in the district come to my class and check it out. So if any of you guys are interested, email Tom Tuskin, come right in. I'm an open door. I would love that. The more feedback I have, the better. There's a reason why the Apollo era spurred on so much innovation. Like, any of you who grew up during the Apollo era or whose parents did, like, there was definitely a vision and a dream, and people accomplished something amazing. And we had a renaissance after that. It's because people could see a goal. We achieved it. The average age of the Apollo engineer was 26. Now, how many 26-year-olds do you know now that could build a rocket? Not a lot. So they did something with that. We're way behind the ball with that in public schools. I think each public school, because of the affordability of going to space and doing these things, is relatively cheap now. You can go to space for less than 10 grand. Which was unthinkable even 10 years ago. Like, we can definitely say, hey, look, our seniors are, in conjunction with all the other CTE programs, we could be building things that go to space. What does that do to our elementary school kids that see these high schoolers doing that? The other thing I worked on too with AIAA was something called the Small Business Innovative Research Grant. So it allowed, especially immigrant communities, because you can't work in most U.S. defense contractors or at NASA or SpaceX even because of spying, and we have regulations for that. ITAR is one of them. So we have the SBIR fund, which allows new graduates to pursue research grants with no risk to go back to your communities and build technologies there. In Duluth, especially West Duluth, where Denfeld is, you have really inexpensive housing that if you took someone from Silicon Valley and said, hey, look at this house that's $170,000, they would gobble that up in a second because they're living on couches or in their cars. And we have this beautiful harbor here with great schools and awesome people. It's a magnet waiting to happen. And how many of you have met someone who works at Duluth who's also from Duluth? People want to stay here. So I see CTE in particular can have the highest benefit to closing those equity gaps because it's super easy to measure with us, because we have, in the industry also have those huge gaps. But also you have tons of scholarships available because of that, grants. The money's there for when these kids decide to go to college. If their family doesn't come for money, no problem. We'll get it for you. I usually average around $100,000 to $200,000 of scholarships for my kids who apply each year, the previous schools I've worked at. So if we can just reinvest in teachers more, because we're really behind the ball on that from my experience in industry, you can definitely get the income back, and especially West Duluth. I think West Duluth has the highest benefit for this. Because when kids come back, they buy those houses, they start those small businesses, which you go drive down any street there's tons of closed down buildings. That's ripe for economic development. That's why I like working there. that's why I want to do CTE, is because ultimately you want your community to be lifted up. You want people to have opportunity that otherwise wouldn't. And so, I mean, we've got a dream list of stuff that we would want, so the more money we can get, the better. I can go talking on and on, like my lobbyist days, but like this is definitely a need there, and everyone here is, you know, whatever they want is truthfully things that they want to give the kids an ability to show mastery in their classes, which is hard to do.
Thank you. I see Member Sadowski has her light on.
Yeah, I had another question from before, but now I'm just like so inspired and excited about, I have a kiddo who's in 9th grade at East and wants to take physics next year, and they're trying to determine, do they take the aerospace physics or the regular physics, and they're super excited about it. I really appreciate you paying attention to those equity gaps specifically with different populations. I wanted to share another little nugget from our MSBA conference. One of the, what was the gal's name who did the keynote with Hadi? What was her name? Hannah. Hannah is working on advocating to make computer, I think computer technology, computer science a requirement.
Science.
And they talked a lot about just different ways we could kind of address computer science in our schools. By integrating it into some of our elementary classrooms early on, integrating it into some of our other classrooms. So just thanks for all that information, and thanks for the invitation. I'd love to visit your class sometime. My other question, which you guys may be able to answer, or maybe Ethan would be able to answer it, is when I think about teacher, like attracting new teachers and retaining teachers, how does our technology resources in our classroom impact that, if at all?
Yes, come on up. And I want to say thank you to the both of you. And if I could have the two principals come up, because our principals are going to speak next. So our two principals, if they would join us, that'd be great. Or one principal.
Here to answer it as I was the principal at East High School the past 7 years, and I think these two will echo this. What we have been seeing in interviews and in recruiting has changed drastically as the workforce has shrunk. And more often than not, we find it's a candidate interviewing us more than us interviewing them. And consistently, one of the questions that's asked is, what is the technology available to students and staff? What will I see in a classroom? What will I see in computer science K-12? How ready are they for what I want to do with them? I would add that computer science is now going to be mandated, embedded in K-12, so you'll see a lot of growth there. K-12? Nope. You'll see program growth there because of that, but it will be K-12. So I would just say that we're consistently seeing that asked as a question when they're shopping around for where they'd like to work. Not only do we have a gorgeous town to live in and a lot of opportunity here, but they are asking specific questions about technology that our students are experiencing and what they'll have to work with as a teacher.
Thank you. And I have Principal Jim Erickson from Lower MacArthur here, as well as Tom Cockcut from Homecroft. They both will be sharing.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Bonds. Welcome to our new board members. I haven't met all of you, but it's great to see you here tonight. As Mr. Bonds said, I'm Tom Cockett, the principal at Homecroft. I've been with Duluth 6 years now. And first off, kudos to Bart and Peter. Great presentation. I love the visuals. There's not a whole lot more to add. But we're on the opposite end, meaning of the learning spectrum a little bit. And I guess I'll take things back from a research base for a minute. Brenda's still here. If you think about John Hattie, we've been learning a lot this year about teacher clarity. And in terms of teacher clarity, part of that is success criteria, and part of that is, engagement and relevancy with our students. And while I'm still very traditional in mindset, because you still got to know your 1, 2, 3s and ABCs, our kids are digital natives at this time. And without the tools in their hands, it's basically paint in a bucket. You talk about going to space, you've got to build that rocket somewhere along the way. And the tools, truly, that we've talked about all night are things that we need to have not only to create engagement and create meaning in classroom, but to make those dreams happen. And if you're thinking, well, what isn't happening? We won't give the laundry list because that's a list of complaints, but in terms of putting tangible resources in the hands of our kids, we've got curriculum, like Ms. Sparts said, that we can't deliver because there's not a smart board in the classroom. It's a tool that's needed. Basic needs such as phones. I can call Bart and he can find something. He's been a magician with sometimes things, but if we have new staff that starts and I say, hey, Bart, I need a phone, it's not like, oh, I'm going to send you one right now. It's, I'll get you that when I can get one. And through whatever magic he has, those questions have been answered and it's been met and responded, but that is not an ever-ending pool of resources. Our paraprofessionals, they work with a lot of our neediest kiddos. They're required to do virtual trainings and they have no devices to do them on. They don't have a desktop computer, they're not assigned a Chromebook. And the message I've heard repeatedly is this is more than a Chromebook in terms of this referendum, and I'm truly appreciative of that because it is more than just a device. It is equipping our kids for what's next. And some of the other things that have come up, you talked about safety. I'm one of the buildings with 16-year-old cameras. If you look at your personal cell phone, or if you go get a family picture, you're not asking for a camera that's 16 or 17 years old. I have, as we all do, there are spots in our buildings we cannot see. And in terms of safety, that weighs on a building principal because I can't see. And the cameras that we have, even though we're grateful for them and they're maintained, they're not great. It's like looking at a reel from, you know, those old reels, if you remember the back in the day, right? Those are just a few examples of needs that we have ongoing in our classrooms. Even the PA system. Some of the speakers in our ceilings, they crackle, snap, and pop. And when it comes to learning and distractions and staying focused, you know, you've all heard the squirrel adage. If a microphone goes haywire because of a faulty speaker, we just can't replace it. It takes time and money. And for example, before we got the new smart boards, we were using fundraising money to pay for those things. And it's not because the district wasn't supporting us, but our budgets are limited, and we really get that. But when bulbs at that time were a couple $100s or non-existent because the pandemic hit, it was scrape, scrounge, and steal. And those are the times that we live in, and I get that. But please know, it's more than just the flashy new device for us at the elementary level. When it comes to delivering curriculum content, engaging lessons that are meaningful, even preparing teachers for digital innovation. We had those DIS positions in buildings. We don't have those now. And that's not a complaint, but please know when those things go away, it makes the work heavy for fewer people. And if we have a teacher who needs something, it's not, okay, I'll get back to you within an hour or at the end of the day. It's maybe when I'm there next week, I might get to you. And I don't know about your kids, but if they have a question or a need, hey, I'll get back to you in a week, honey. You know, I'm talking about my kids now. That answer doesn't hold a lot of weight with them because kids, we're immediate. We want it right now. It's at our fingertips, right? It's right here. So those needs, those asks, whether it's from security or if it's from just student learning in the classroom from an engagement standpoint, or even, you know, teacher capacity, those needs are real. I could go on, but I know Mr. Erickson is here too. That's just kind of a snapshot of kind of the things we see day to day. And the ask isn't light. You know, whether it's passing on certain sides of the district versus not. We have kiddo needs across the district K-12, pre-K through 12 that are very impacted, you know, by whether I want to say lack of or the resources that only go so far. So Mr. Erickson, any follow-up things that I might have missed there?
Good evening, board members. My name is Jim Erickson. I'm the principal at Laura MacArthur Elementary. And if you would ever like to come and visit, I'd be more than happy to have you in our building at any time. You're going to hear, I know, a lot of passion, and you've already heard that, and I'm sure you'll continue to hear that. But I guess I'd like to maybe just shift just a little bit. Yes, the devices are important, and that's an element, but even more so for me is about just the basic needs that we have in the building, and the infrastructure, I guess, is the big piece of that. Just today, I had an IEP meeting with a family that wasn't able to have a meeting in our building. We use these devices constantly for meetings to meet with our families. We've got a variety of related staff that are in different buildings, and so maximizing that, we're able to have them join us on a virtual meeting. Those things are very important to us in order to make sure that we're serving kids and serving families in the best possible way. Today, and it's not every day, but because of the bandwidth, we tend to have interruptions. We tend to have, can so-and-so turn their camera off because we're getting a disconnect. I want to make sure that I am servicing our families and servicing our kids in the best possible way. And that also means just a basic line of communication is super, super important, because if I have that from the get-go, I know that I can start a foundation for the rest of their school career, and that's truly important. Another example I wanted to bring up to you is that, again, even though that we talk a lot about devices, we also talk about that tool in meeting the needs of all kids, and not just when we think about astrophysics and all of these great things. I love that. That's fantastic. Laura MacArthur is a building with 42% of our students receiving special services. And these students have whatever variety of challenges, from some minimal to some very significant. Our devices can oftentimes be a gateway to the only way that they can be communicating with their teachers, with their peers, and that is a truly remarkable thing. Whether it's difficulty in reading, whether it's a difficulty in writing, or even just speaking. When we have the capacity in our building to make sure that those pieces can operate and function well, then we're truly supporting all students. And so we want to make sure that we're remembering those students that may not have the ability to do as much, because they can oftentimes get forgotten. So thank you for your time and listening.
Thank you. Superintendent Magus, thank you.
Yes, thank you all for your leadership of the buildings, and also for sharing your perspective today. And I really want to say thanks, and thinking about Laura MacArthur, thinking about what are the effects of this, and also what amount should we ask for. When I think about, if we ask for something that's less than what we need, we're going to be in a situation where, when we talk about some of the things, we've talked about how taking care of our technology needs will free up things a little bit with our budget, so that we can make sure we're taking care of the full needs of the district. If we go for something that actually doesn't take care of the technology needs, then it makes it so that we're, again, still trying to, take from Peter to pay Paul, and piece things together. So I think that further edifies our recommendation as a administration, that we do move forward with at least the $5 million, if not the $5.2 million, because of those needs. Those needs are very, very important. And I think about the work that Jim has done at Laura MacArthur with, in many ways running a community school, even though it's not technically a community school. It is in spirit and in its nature community school oriented. And we'd love to see, I know that there was a community schools grant to expand programming for community schools formally at Laura MacArthur. That would be something that I would love to see if the referendum is able to pass. I think that could be a benefit. So I want to keep that in mind as we move forward too. Just as an aside, that if we don't ask for enough, we're still going to be trying to piece things together. And also that what we heard from our referendum strategists was that unless we go really low, if we go to the 4.6, then that might be something that the community feels like we really did listen, we made some adjustment, but that could still alienate people that were supportive of us in the referendum, and it would also make people wonder, did we really need what we asked for in the first place, and why should they trust us now? So our recommendation as an administration is to consider the $5.2 million ask. And if not the $5.2 million, I think that the $5 million would be our second choice. Not because we're trying to ask for more than we need, but because we're trying to do everything possible to advocate for what we need. And I think hearing the various stakeholders this evening, I think it further further clarifies in my mind, and I can see head shaking here, what we do need. And it is an ask. It's a huge ask of you as board members. It's a huge ask of you all as stakeholders to help share the information and get the information out. And it's a huge ask of our community and our taxpayers. It's not something we take lightly in bringing to the board for consideration. But we want to make sure that we've had an opportunity to answer your questions about the referendum, and also that you have opportunity for dialogue now and or at the regular meeting that we have coming up.
Member Sadowski?
Just to piggyback off of what you were just saying, Superintendent Magus, I would point out Baird's presentation from the last committee of the whole meeting on page 6. When I've been thinking about, the ask and what that might look like, this was really helpful. If we ask for the middle of the road, the 5 million versus the 5.29, it's really, it's a 60 cents per month difference. That's what it is. And then for the annual difference, it would be $7.16. Is that right, when I'm looking at that? So, yep, that can be a lot of money to a lot of people. But I would be in support of, if we're going to do this, to get what we need for all our programs and all of our students. And I appreciate Principal Erickson bringing that up, because as many of us have mentioned in other meetings, if we don't have those one-to-one devices, there's some families who will be able to purchase a Chromebook for their kids. It won't even be a thought, I'll do that, and then my kids can email their teachers. But there's also a lot of other families who don't have that opportunity, and we need to make sure that we're leveling the playing field.
Thank you. Board Chair, I don't have any other presentations at this point in time. And
Okay,
guess
I wondered, because I still see some out in our audience, but I really wasn't expecting that our leadership would know that this was a recent ask. I think we just really asked for another opportunity to just have discussion and information around the referendum. But I'm so glad that you were able to come tonight. I know you must have just gotten an invite like maybe the last Friday. And for you to come and stay and share, at least personally, I was never in doubt that I was going to support the referendum, but I never really quite could get my hand around what we were going to be able to share out. And I know it's going to be an ask of, so tonight we just got an incredible amount of good communication, information, and ways that we can meet with our communities and share. But also, I just know that all of us worked really diligently from probably, end of July through the middle of November, and it pulled us away from maybe even the relationships of getting into your buildings and being able to just visit it with you and come and see you just for what you are. It took our administration leadership out of that role. It took board members out of that role. And that's okay. We want to work hard to be able to allow. And I think the first referendum ask I shared with the groups that we went to, whether it was staff or PTAs or communities at churches, that I saw that the referendum we were asking for on November 7th was like a game changer. I've been in Duluth and in the education world of Duluth for almost 40 years. And it always seemed like Duluth, even though we all had what we sort of needed to be effective in our classrooms, I always felt like we always acted like scarcity. Like we were always in a scarcity mode. And so, you went and asked for something and you were really, reminded that, we really didn't. So I am delighted that when able to, that our CFO and our leadership team sees the need for an extra kindergarten teacher, or sees the need of where we go, or even sees the need to go for a second referendum, which is really going to put a lot of taxation on on our leaders. And they're going to have to, again, step away from some of the roles in order to be our face. But, and the other thing that our community didn't seem to totally understand, we think the ones that we were talking to did, is that we can't really ask them to pass it. We can give them the information. And I think community members were really kind of confused about that. Like, why isn't Jill Lofeld saying, vote for this, come on? And of course, Jill Lofeld, the speech coach at Denfeld, maybe could have, but, or in other places where I was just a community member in the grocery store. But when we were at PTAs or at organized listening sessions for referendum, we had to just give you the information. And hoped that the way that we smiled when we said what we would do with it was going to be enough. So I just want us to also know that we're so appreciative you all came. I think we got a lot of great new insight into the importance of our technology, which goes far beyond. And nowhere in our pie graph is like curriculum needs, right? Or where is the curriculum piece of the pie? Because I heard that again too, that, when we go to using all the creativity that technology purchases can be, where does the curriculum dollars come out of?
Yes, it's under the tool. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. If I just add one thing, just short to that. The best thing you can do for me, give me some time, paid time in the summer, where I can just sign up, say, hey, for 40 hours, 80 hours, whatever, to work on my classes with no one in my room. I get so much done with that. Especially with technology, we just gotta be quiet, I gotta focus. With new stuff, whether it's 3D printers or CNC machine or whatever, that's the best investment in a teacher, is to give us time. For sure.
And that goes for elementary too.
Thank you. And in that document, that spreadsheet, it will identify digital curriculum. It more than likely is going to be under the category of supporting our classrooms, because that's where you will find the tools that are necessary, especially if we're talking about curriculum that is digital in nature. Now, many of our textbooks, many of our curriculum materials are not books. We have supporting materials that are digital in nature, and so that's where it would be. So thank you, and I would be remiss not to, I see a green light, okay, I would be remiss not to also say thank you to everyone who attended today and came and supported, because it was a quick turnaround, and they showed up, and I really, really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, because this is game-changing. You stole the phrase before I could say it, because I was prepared to say this is going to be game-changing for our district, because going in a place and operating from a space where we have resources that are available for our staff and, more importantly, for our students is game-changing. Living in an environment where we are constantly living in scarcity or operating from a lack, it's hard. It's difficult. It puts a lot of burden on our staff, and our students feel it. And it's more than just, again, chasing this referendum because we need these resources. It's because it's going to make a difference in students' lives. And so I want to communicate that again as well. Member Mike, so.
Thank you, everyone. I will be honest in that when I walked into this meeting, I was thinking that I would be someone who would advocate for the middle ask, a $5 million levy ask. Mostly to be respectful of the fact that it didn't pass overwhelmingly to those constituents and voters in Duluth who may have felt that it was a bit too much. After hearing the passion and how important this is, not only for preparing our kids for the future, but for eliminating some of the equity barriers that we have in our community, I now understand how important these funds are to our district and to our community's future. So just in the transparency of having discussions, I just wanted to say that. I also feel that what we heard tonight needs to be packaged up and given to our community, because it can be us at the doors with a little postcard, having just general, topics. But when our principals are saying our kids need this technology, when our teachers are saying this technology is a game changer. This is what I can do with it. This is how it's going to affect and benefit you. I feel like they're the ones that need to be front and center in these kind of communications with our community. So, thank you.
Superintendent Magus?
I agree, and I quite honestly have shifted in my thinking, going from the 5 million to the 5.2 over the course of the past few days as we put together the materials and we see the weight and the impact of what this will mean for our kids, and really thinking about our 3 areas of supporting every student, of advancing equity and improving systems. This really goes far in that direction. And then you might have seen me whispering to Simone, because I kept saying, oh, we need to capture that thought, or we need to include that. And then Adele Wellens, our communications officer, is listening from home, and she was saying, oh, we need to use that quote, or we could use this. I think we will be watching this committee of the whole several times, and probably have our referendum group watch it as well, because I really want to say how much I appreciate and feel honored to work with such an amazing team. And from people who have been here for many, many years to people who are new and bring excitement, I'm thrilled to be able to capture those messages. But I think we actually need to probably do some videotaping of you saying what you said now, and have that out on social media too, because I think that's more powerful in many ways as well. So, thank you. And I look forward to, if the board has additional questions between now and the vote on Tuesday, assuming that the board wants to have a vote at the regular school board meeting, we would be glad to have individual meetings or answer questions, or if there are questions, usually if there's a question that comes to us from one board member, others might be thinking about it. So quite often, if we have a response to a question, I'll share it, say a board member asked this question, and I'll share the response with everybody. So if you have questions for me or my team or the stakeholders, please let me know.
There is no official adjournment at our committee of the whole meeting, so thank you all again. Good night.
Thank you.